What you are about to hear is not a slip of the tongue. It is not a misquote, and it is not taken out of context. During a live interview on Newsmax, the President of the United States said things so disconnected from verifiable reality that it stopped people mid-scroll. We are talking about a sitting president whose words on camera in real time drifted so far from actual facts that the only honest way to describe it is a psychotic break. Polling numbers he got wrong. The economy he misread. Foreign policy he contradicted himself on. And a war with Iran he is apparently winning, according to absolutely no one. We have to talk about this, because like it or not, this man is running the country for the next 3 years. So buckle up, because even by Trump's standards, what we are about to unpack is genuinely, breathtakingly unhinged. Let us start with the Save America Act, because Trump opened with this one and it tells you everything you need to know. He is ranting again about election integrity, pushing hard to terminate the filibuster so this bill can pass. Now, the Save Act on paper sounds reasonable to some people. Protect elections, sure. But what it actually does is dramatically raise the bar for voter registration. We are talking about requiring passports, birth certificates, and other documents just to prove you are eligible to vote. And here is the thing, outcome determinative voter fraud in federal elections is essentially non-existent. The Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society, two of the most conservative research groups in America, have been hunting for this problem for decades. Their best result, a few dozen cases across millions and millions and millions of votes spanning 30 years. That is not a crisis. That is a rounding error so small it barely registers as a decimal point. And here's where it gets even more ironic. Trump wants to blow up the filibuster to pass this bill, but his own Senate Republicans are pumping the brakes. Why? Because they know that once you tear down that guardrail, a future Democratic Senate and a Democratic president could use that same power to pass anything they want. That is a door that swings both ways. So the very Republicans who would benefit from the SAVE Act are the ones killing it because they are not willing to burn down the rules of the Senate to do it. But there is another layer here that nobody is talking about loudly enough. Studies suggest that the documentation requirements in this bill would actually burden Republican voters more than Democratic ones, because statistically, Republican-leaning demographics are less likely to have the specific paperwork this law would demand. So this thing Trump is championing could very well backfire on the exact voters he is trying to protect. The irony is almost too perfect. Now let us get to the part that genuinely made jaws drop. Trump looked into that camera and said, with total confidence, that he has some of the best poll numbers of his career. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to make a point, he cited the Harvard-Harris poll to back himself up. So I went and looked at that exact poll, the same poll Trump is bragging about, and here's what it actually says. When asked who had the better economy, Biden scored 53% to Trump's 47%. Among independents, 65% said the economy was better under Biden versus 35% who gave that credit to Trump. Let that sink in. The specific poll that Trump waved around on live television as proof of his popularity actually shows that Americans, including independents, think the guy he spent years calling Sleepy Joe ran a better economy. That is not spin. That is not cherry picking. That is the poll he chose. His poll, saying he is losing. And then there is Iran. Trump told Newsmax that the war is going well, that the world is thanking him, and that stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is obviously a good thing. On that last point, sure, most Americans agree. Nobody wants a nuclear Iran. But here is where the logic completely falls apart. Because Trump himself, after Operation Midnight Hammer last year, stood before the country and declared that Iran's nuclear program had been totally obliterated. Done. Finished. So which is it? If you already destroyed their nuclear capability, why are we still at war over it? Either you were wrong when you said you obliterated it, or you are wrong now about why this war is necessary. Or you were lying then, or you are lying now. These things cannot all be true at the same time. They are mutually exclusive, and the President of the United States does not get to just pick whichever version of reality is most convenient for the news cycle that day. And here's the part that the mainstream conversation keeps glossing over. To the extent that Iran is even close to having a nuclear weapon right now, that trajectory was accelerated by Donald Trump himself, because Trump was the one who ripped up the Iran nuclear deal. Under that agreement, Iran had no viable path to nuclear weapons. Inspectors were in, enrichment was capped, the international community had eyes on the program. Then Trump called it the worst deal ever made and walked away. The moment he did that, Iran started racing toward nuclear enrichment, not because of Obama, not because of Biden, because Trump eliminated the only framework that was keeping them contained. So now he is fighting a war against a problem that his own decision helped create, while claiming to be the hero of the story. It would be almost impressive if it were not so catastrophically dangerous for the people actually living through the consequences of these choices on the ground. Now let us talk about Germany, because this one perfectly illustrates how Trump's foreign policy is being driven not by strategy, but by ego. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz made a fairly straightforward observation. He said that Iran has, quote, humiliated the United States, and that the Iranians are extremely skilled at running out the clock in negotiations, making American diplomats travel to meetings that produce absolutely nothing. That is a pretty accurate description of what the reporting shows, but Trump did not respond by making a counter-argument. He went on Truth Social and attacked Merz personally, telling Germany they are doing poorly economically and that their chancellor does not know what he is talking about. And then, because the chancellor hurt his feelings, Trump announced he was considering pulling American troops out of Germany, troops that 1 month earlier the Pentagon had concluded in a full review were absolutely necessary and should not be moved. And the part that should genuinely alarm every single person watching this is what happened next at the Pentagon. 3 separate defense officials told Politico that they learned about the possible troop withdrawal the same way everyone else did, by reading Trump's Truth Social post. The institution responsible for executing that order had no warning, no briefing, no strategic review, nothing. They were blindsided by a social media announcement made by a president who was angry at a foreign leader for accurately describing his diplomatic failures, and then Defense Secretary Hegseth followed through and issued the actual withdrawal order. 5,000 troops pulled from Germany, dropping overall presence to about 33,000. A decision with massive NATO implications, made not because military strategists recommended it, not because intelligence assessments called for it, but because Trump was embarrassed. That is the foreign policy of the most powerful military on earth, Ray. And we end where everything ends with Trump, which is in total contradiction. When discussing a potential peace deal with Iran, it came out that a serious offer had been floated. The United States would provide Iran with enriched uranium for medical and civilian energy purposes, completely free of charge, in exchange for Iran giving up its weapons program entirely. Iran turned it down. That refusal, by the way, does raise real questions about whether Tehran actually wants a deal at all. But here's the thing, Trump disowned that offer immediately. On live television, he said, and I am quoting directly, "I wouldn't have approved that. I'm not giving them anything." So let us be crystal clear about what the sitting president of the United States just announced on live television. There will be no concessions, no exchange, no framework, nothing offered. He expects Iran to simply surrender, unconditionally. That is not diplomacy. That is not art of the deal. That is a fantasy dressed up as... So here is where we land. In one single interview, the president cited a poll that proved he is losing. He championed a bill that might hurt his own voters. He contradicted his own claims about Iran's nuclear program. He started a geopolitical standoff with a NATO ally because of a personal insult. He blindsided his own Pentagon with a troop withdrawal announcement made on social media. And he declared on live television that his entire Iran strategy amounts to expecting unconditional surrender from a nation that has not surrendered. This is not just dishonesty. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This conversation is too important to have alone.